Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Victor. I'm from Aviation High School. I'm the Community Associate for Technology, Robotics, and Procurement. I'm here to talk about DOE purchasing, contracts, and our newest, well, not really new, but ERMA approval for all things software related in the DOE environment. I have two QR codes up if you guys want to keep a copy of the slides or the agenda. The agenda is a Google Doc, so once you open it, it's going to stay inside your Google Doc history, and you can always refer to it in the future when I put more stuff into this presentation, if I ever give this presentation again. Along with that, I also have some basic contact information if you guys ever have questions and want to reach out to me. Right. So we're going to talk about a couple different topics today. We're going to go through what our DOE vendors are. So that's all the companies that we work with in the Department of Education, the people that we can actually spend our tax money and school budget on. We're going to go over the life of a purchase order, what a purchase order is, how they get generated, where they come from, and how they get to a company, and how the stuff that you actually want ends up delivered to your school. We're also going to talk about payment and invoices. So that includes things like, how does a company that's working with the DOE get paid? How do they, what methods of payment are there? Sometimes vendors get really angry at us because they don't get their money after they render their services. So we're going to talk about what some of that looks like and why sometimes that may happen. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is ERMA compliance, which is all about data privacy, data security. So it's all sorts of like legal stuff that's, you know, making sure that our students and staff data within the DOE environment is safe. All right, so our DOE vendors. So the DOE vendors, like I said earlier, these are the companies that we work with. These are the companies that we render our services from, the companies that we buy our physical, tangible goods from. And a DOE vendor is basically any company can be a DOE vendor, whether they're US-based or they're international-based. They get registered with the DOE, and then they get a FAMIS vendor ID number or a federal tax ID number, or they can be identified with a vendor number or a federal tax ID number. These vendors, they are just basically any company. They're registered both inside the DOE's procurement system and they're registered inside the city's financial management system. There is a massive database of companies that schools can purchase from, not including Amazon, unfortunately. But there's a massive list of people that we can purchase from. The caveat is that the list that we can use is not actually public. Like, students and most staff members can't just go online and search it up, and it doesn't exist. It's inside this heavily gated financial system for your school, otherwise known as FAMIS. So if you don't know if a company is a vendor or not, or whether you can purchase from them, go and check with your purchasing secretary or whoever does the financial management in your building. Typically your building administrators will have access to this system. And then all different vendors in the city, there's two different types. There's either contracted or your non-contracted vendors. All of your contracted vendors are going to be the people that have a negotiation with the Division of Contracts and Purchasing. So these are people that have massive dollar amounts of contracts, exceeding 100,000. Some of them are multi-million-dollar contracts, or even hundreds of millions of dollars of contracts for certain technology-based contracts, right? For anyone that is non-contracted, there's maximum spend per purchase order and per procurement. So if a vendor is sole source, which means that you can't buy that item from anywhere else. So if I wanted to buy the stapler, this stapler is not sole source. There's many staplers and many people that make staplers. But if it's some proprietary thing that no one else makes, right, that would be something that's considered sole source, and you can spend $25,000 if it's non-contracted. Otherwise, if I wanted to buy some thousands of numbers of staplers, I can only buy up to $15,000 worth of staplers before I hit my limit. To exceed a procurement threshold, so these are the ones that I just mentioned, you can also fill out something called an intake form, and that can get you a contract specifically for your school. I don't think most robotics purposes don't exceed a lot of these thresholds, but if you guys have any questions about contracts, we can go in depth into that towards the end. Did I click my button? There's my button. All right. So purchase orders. Purchase orders are unlike whenever like you want to buy something and you go online and type in credit card information and a shipping address and they take your money and then deliver your stuff. The DOE's purchasing system works a little funny. We're under something called Net 30 terms, which basically states that whenever like I as a company, I have to deliver something to you first before you pay me. So I have to deliver something from you, and then basically the purchase order is a legally binding agreement that says whenever I deliver to you within 30 days, that I rendered, right? So there's two types of purchase orders that you can make. There's goods or services, or commodities or services. I think goods is an old term for it, and now they updated the term called commodities now. But by definition, goods or commodities is anything that's tangible property, any like physical items. So a chalkboard, a desk, a camera, chair, dry erase marker, pencil, laptop, anything, all like equipment, all that is considered goods or commodities, including software. And then there's services, and services is considered anything that's labor, time, or effort. So if you're if you're getting someone to do professional development for you, like teach you something, that's considered a service. If you're having someone, for example, FedEx is a vendor. If you're ever shipping something, they're rendering you a service that they're rendering you labor and effort. So that's what's considered a service. Within the whole entire purchasing system, there's also something called simplified bidding. What that means is that we have to find the best deals. Like the whole purpose of the system is we want to find the best deals to make the most out of our taxpayers' money. So bidding starts whenever you're buying goods at $250. So if your entire purchase order totals above $250, you have to go to 3 companies and you have to ask them for a quote, which is basically just saying, hey, how much will you sell this thing to me for? And then you pick the cheapest vendor that's on that list, right? Or you can also say, I want to pick a different company for whatever like different purpose that might be. So for that, for goods, that starts at $250. If you're procuring services, so that's again like labor, effort, time. If you're procuring services, that's a dollar amount that starts at $5,000 or above. Now there's one more type of vendor, which is called, there are certain conditions, I should say, where you do not have to do competitive or simplified bidding. And this includes vendors that are contracted. So contracted vendors, just because they have a DOE like FAMIS number doesn't equate that they're contracted. Contracted vendors go through an entire negotiation process with a central team. That's the Division of Contracts and Purchasing. So for contracted vendors, there's no bidding because technically the bidding was already done, just not by the school, by a whole separate dedicated team of people that do contracts for their that's their whole job. The other 2 conditions is that if a company is a city certified MWBE, that's a minority and or women-owned business enterprise. That's a city certification that they can get. So if a vendor has that certificate that they're an MWBE and they're registered and they uploaded that documentation to the DOE telling them that, hey, we have this certification and it's up to date and valid, then you also don't have to do competitive bidding because the Office of Supplier Diversity wants to encourage more use of MWBE vendors in the city. And then the last thing is our sole source vendors. Our sole source vendors is if you designed some proprietary product that no other company sells, that company can write a letter saying that, hey, we are the only company that manufactures or sells this type of service or goods or whatever it may be. And that letter can get uploaded along with the pricing information that they gave you when you generate this purchase order. And you won't have to do any kind of competitive bidding, right? Whenever we talk about contracts, also there's two types of contracted purchase orders. So this includes things that are on Shop DOE. That's a public platform that anyone can make an account, whether you are DOE or non-DOE. Anyone can make an account and go shop on Shop DOE. You can't, if you're not from a school and have a DOE email, you won't be able to actually order anything and buy anything, but you'll be able to browse the web and like look at what things are on there and what things aren't on there, things like that. And that's one type of contract. We call that an e-catalog contract. The second thing is we have a non-list contract. So a non-list contract is, let's say, this could be applying to like one specific school. So I'm from Aviation High School. We use some very special items, right? Like we have to buy airplane parts, and we have bought an entire plane once. We have like 7 of them in our backyard, right? And like for certain cases like this, or like engines, for example, or certain types of trainers, these are like very expensive items. They're like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And for these purposes like these, we have to create, or I should say fill out an intake form and get a contract generated specifically for our school with specific companies like for that purpose, right? So I don't think, again, like I don't think for robotics purposes, unless you have a really massive robotics program that you're spending like exceeding amounts of like over 25,000, so like you're spending like 50,000. What happened? Huh? Oh, like you guys, oh, I don't know what you guys, like how your budget is divided up. I think I saw a finance presentation from you guys where it was like you have a large section of like PA grants and donations and sponsorships. But yeah, for some schools, if you're spending like this, like what we're really talking about is like spending taxpayer dollars. You can have a contract generated, like some are for your school, some are for certain districts, some things are for a collection of certain districts, so like a specific region. So like if a superintendent, for example, is pushing some sort of project that you know they want like all schools in their under their supervision to do, they might do a contract that allows this big spending, right, for all of their high schools in the region. But for our purposes, I think most of robotics purchase orders are all like sole source POs, because like things like Kraken motors, you can't find like Kraken motors from like 5 other companies. Like they're not really like some some popular general like item like a stapler or a camera or things like that. The last type of purchase order that you can make is something called a SIP. It stands for the Small Item Payment Process. And what this is like if a staff member, if there's an emergency, right? That's really when you should be using SIPs. If there's an emergency and a staff member like pays out of pocket with their credit card or their debit card or cash or whatever it may be, right? So instead of the school paying, the teacher or whatever administrator or anyone like is paying with their own money, you can do a SIP and you can get reimbursed for whatever expense that was. And there's like a list of exceptions that like SIPs are under a very, very strict audit system. So like don't touch those unless they're absolutely necessary. Purchase orders are always the preferred method. SIPs are just like emergency, last resort. So once you have all your information you need for your purchase orders, so your purchase orders get entered into the system, you got all your pricing, you followed all the proper procedures on the school side, what happens to this order that you want to do? So this order gets sent out electronically via email to the company the following morning at 6 a.m. Right, so if I do an order today and my principal or assistant principal approves the order will then go out tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock to the vendor. From time to time, you may have noticed, or you might not have, depending on who you purchase from, that you'll put an order in and then things will never show up. And like it's radio silence, there's like no way to track it, things just never show up, right? And there could be a lot of different reasons why something like that has happened. One of those being like, hey, if the vendor quite literally has no email on file, your order is not going to show up, right? Because the vendor never got the order in the first place. That's like I'm placing an order and like I never gave you, like, you never got a copy of the order, right? I put it in the system on my end, but if you never got a copy, the stuff isn't going to come, right? The other thing is like a payment issue. From time to time, a lot of companies treat the city as a whole, like as one entity, despite us being comprised of 1,500 plus schools. They treat all of us as one person or one company, right? So if one school doesn't pay the vendor, they put all of the city's orders on hold, right? Which is something, you know, something else that's been happening with, I think Vex Robotics has been one of the ones that have been having issues getting paid, so they haven't been fulfilling a lot of these orders. Which brings me to the last point, certification of delivery. So once the school gets something that, you know, was from a purchase order, make sure that your procurement secretary or whoever manages and oversees purchasing in your building goes back into the same system called FAMIS and certifies it for delivery. And what that really means is you're just saying, hey, I received the package, right? And that starts that 30-day, you know, countdown for like when we, you know, hey, we're honoring our terms and paying the vendor within 30 days after we receive all the goods, right? And basically you just basically say, hey, I received all the goods, they're in good condition, nothing is missing, I checked over, you can pay the people now, right? So please remember, certify your POs every time, as soon as possible. Whenever you get your stuff, certify your POs. Don't forget, otherwise your vendors are not going to get paid and they're going to get very upset. Maybe not just you, but it may also affect the rest of the city. Yeah.
So for FRC registration, how would you categorize that? Is it commodity or service?
I believe for FRC registration and like attendance fees, there's a object code that falls under services. We can look at that. We can look at the list of budgeting codes. But from what we've done, we've always done it as a service, and I think there's an object code specifically for like registration or like attendance or entry, admission fees, things like that. I think the category is actually called admission fees, but we can double check.
The trouble is, if we're not competing in New York City Regional until April, and there's a MAP 30, we can't go back and say they allowed us into the competition in April, but then we're getting penalized by not having a registration up in time. And it's December, so I don't know if can you call it a good, like, hey, it's not about the event, it's about the season and the kid parks or something.
I mean, I think that there's a couple, like there might be a couple different ways you can like skirt around what the definition of like receipt, like receiving it is. Like in theory, like whenever you pay registration, you get admitted tickets to go to the event. Yeah, like or you get you get like some form of like confirmation saying that, hey, you're allowed to enter, right? And that can serve as like like an admission, as like a proof of you know, delivery per se. But especially these large amounts, I would definitely defer to the Division of School Leadership. Every single group of schools has one. So Queens North has one. I think you are part of Queens North, actually. Yeah, I think so. I think that's part of Queens North. So every single like district, several districts has a Division of School Leadership team, and they'd probably be able to provide like more specific guidance. Because the other thing that does kind of suck is that there's a lot of different standards across different districts. So how Queens North handles things might not be how another area of Queens handles things. How we handle things in Queens as a whole could be completely different by how Manhattan or Brooklyn handles things, right? So there's just like a lot of, the way that the technical language is written, it's just like so much legal language that almost every borough and every single school leadership office takes their own interpretation of what those rules actually mean. So from time to time, we see a lot of like double standards in a lot of different things. So that's definitely like like in those specific cases, it's more like, hey, how does my school leadership team want to see this, right? And by school leadership team, that's a group of people that's beyond your principal, right? And those are a group of people that oversee specific things for the entire district. So that includes like human resources, has one person per group of districts, finances, legal, like safety, like, because that's a group of people that like you can always defer to with like more specific questions about how they want things handled in their area specifically. All right, so we've arrived at now payments, right? So the vendor has now gotten your purchase order, they fulfilled your purchase order, you've certified the purchase order for delivery, right? So now how do they get paid? And this slide right here is a massive reason why a lot of companies want absolutely nothing to do with us, right? Because this part is ridiculously complicated for maybe some reason, but not enough reason. So where does part start, right? So things get certified for delivery. That's something that's done on the school end. As a vendor, I'm going to give you a little brief history here. Vendors used to have to send an email with the PDF of the invoice and a screenshot or letter from the delivery company. Like if you use FedEx or UPS, you have to send a screenshot, a PDF, a letter or something, and put it into one PDF. If you had more than one PDF, they got upset at you. You had to have only one PDF document, and then send the purchase order number, the invoice number, the company name, and the dollar amount in this very specific email format to one. There was one email per borough, so depending on what borough they rendered the services in, there was a different email for every single borough, and that's how they got paid. From time to time, or most times I should say, we broke net 30 terms. Like companies wouldn't get paid for 60, 90, like whatever number of days, right? Sometimes like people would get services or goods delivered in like October, and then by April, like they're coming back like, hey, by the way, we never got a check for these things that we delivered, right? And it was a massive problem. So this process has been a little bit more simplified now, but it's a little more digital now. So right now, recently, starting April of 2025, so April of this calendar year, but last fiscal year or school year, we started using a new system called Polaris. So Polaris is found within a system called the vendor portal. A lot of vendors might not have registered for this. Not everyone just has an account by default. Starting in the first QR code where there was the agenda, or you can also visit this shortened link down here with the agenda. There's a bunch of links in there that include a link for a vendor portal. And vendor portal is basically just a website that allows you to like track your purchase orders, look at your finances like as a whole with the DOE, as a company working with the DOE, what your finances are like. So how much money you've made over the whole years, how many orders there were, how much have you been paid, what hasn't been paid, things like that. You can also, companies can also add other employees into vendor portal. So vendor portal isn't just one account. There's one account administrator, but the account administrator can add like many different people into it. And we'll go over one little thing that I've started doing with this at the end of the slide. And the most important part is that vendor portal is where you access Polaris. A lot of companies have gotten this part confused where they believe that Polaris is separate from the vendor portal and like there's an actual website for Polaris. There's no actual website for Polaris. Like you can't directly go to the Polaris website and upload your invoices. It doesn't exist, right? You have to go to vendor portal and then click the Polaris button that's on the right side of the screen in order for you to access Polaris. Otherwise, if you just go to the URL of Polaris, it'll just say that you're not authorized or something like that. So yeah, so make sure all your vendors that you work with have a vendor portal account. They'll need that for invoicing, otherwise they can't get paid. So when it comes to Polaris, this is where they're going to submit their invoices. So basically, like all the things that they've delivered and how much it costs and all that. So that's how they submit that dollar amount of invoice. Make sure you have to attach a proof of delivery. A proof of delivery now has been expanded ever so slightly. Like depending on your borough office, they may or may not take a packing slip as a proof of delivery. Depending, right? So like, depending on your on you know where you're, like what borough you're in, everyone again has different standards per borough. But at least for the borough of Queens, where I am, packing slips so far have been accepted as an accepted method of proof of delivery. There are still more specific things, like the invoice itself must have the purchase order number. If the invoice doesn't have the purchase order number, they'll reject it. If it doesn't have proof of delivery, they will reject it. If you did a purchase order for services, so for example, if you did a professional development, if you paid registration, they're going to, or like an admission fee, things like that, they're going to ask you for an agenda and a list of students. They're going to want like a sign-in sheet of some sort and like what you did, an agenda of some sort, so that they know what the service was and who it was provided to. Along with that, we also have the certified for delivery screen that's on the vendor side. The vendor can now see whether a purchase order is certified for delivery. And if it is not, the school will get an email, an automated email from Polaris telling the school to make sure, hey, make sure you confirm that you've received the package before we pay them. And then after, the whole process goes through Polaris, which to the credit of at least the Queens team, I've seen same day responses, even same hour responses on Polaris. Like invoices have been a lot more streamlined and a lot more, and payment has been a lot more streamlined in terms of approval. Like whenever something gets rejected, they'll tell you why it was rejected. And most of these, the time between you submitting something and getting feedback about whether it's accepted or rejected, typically was only about an hour or two. So the credit to them, so far so good. But a lot of vendors don't know what this looks like. So there is a Polaris user guide or vendor guide, which is this really ancient looking PDF of screenshots that was threw together in a Word document that the vendors can use in order to see how to use the software. And from time to time, there's a lot of language or vocabulary that the vendors don't understand. So for certain people, I always schedule a Teams call so that I can walk them through it. But yeah, definitely make sure you walk your vendors through Polaris and make sure that they get paid. Otherwise, they won't be very happy with you. And then the last thing is we're talking about payment. So when we talk about payment, there's two ways that the vendors can get paid. They're either get paid through a paper check, or they get paid through electronic funds, right? So that's like direct deposit. So if you work, you get a direct deposit. That's what that is. So there's a portal called the Payee Information Portal. This is not a portal for the DOE. This is in fact the same portal for the entire city. So if this same company works with the Department of Transportation or New York City Parks or any other city agency, they'll be using the same exact portal for the same exact purpose. So if they go to Pay Information Portal and register their banking information inside that portal, payments come significantly quicker, and paper checks usually take 2 to 3 weeks. They get paid and then they go through snail mail, and USPS has to deliver it in the form of a letter. Sometimes it gets lost, and so that turnaround time is just awful. But for EFT, usually we're seeing payments within a week or two, which is a lot better for both the school and the company. It maintains a much better relationship. It has significantly faster payment processing, like I said, but it also avoids the $3.50 check fee. So far, every single company that receives a paper check, they get deducted $3.50 for every single check that they deposit. Why, I don't know, but that's just how the DOE works. They take $3.50 off every single check. And I didn't know about this until a vendor started complaining. They're like, hey, you have to reimburse us for this check fee. And I'm like, I don't know what I don't know what you want me to do. enroll in direct deposit. That fixes that. That has no fee, and all around it's just a better system. And if the vendor wants to get a contract, they have to be enrolled in direct deposit. And our last topic is ERMA compliance. So what is ERMA? ERMA compliance. So ERMA is basically this, it stands for the Enterprise Request Management Application, right? It's more or less a website, and it's a website that ensures that third-party software companies are third-party software companies and their individual softwares, I should say, are in compliance with New York state law and federal laws like FERPA for data privacy and security. So it makes basically like making sure that companies aren't just taking student data and selling it off to random people, or like feeding it to like advertisements, or using or selling on the black market for malicious purpose, right? So this applies to all third-party software that's used within the DOE. ERMA is basically a website. It's accessible through something called the EdTech portal, and you can find a link to ERMA on that resources document that I gave you. And all of your building SPOCs, which are your technology people, and also your building administrators, should be able to access this portal to go either check whether there's whether a software is compliant, so they've already gone through the process, or you can initiate a new process for a vendor, right? So this process does take like 4 to 6 months to complete, by the way. It's like a ridiculously long legal process, and it involves like DOE lawyers coming in to help you sign, like telling you to sign NDAs. The vendor then undergoes like a security risk evaluation, so asking you like, hey, the idea, I should say, for all softwares is that every single company will get a data breach. It's just a matter of when the company will get a data breach, and when it does get a data breach, how badly does it affect the DOE, right? So it's not a matter of the company will never get a data breach because they're very secure, right? I think like everyone at central and DIIT levels know that like, hey, every company is bound to have a data breach, including us as the DOE, right? We are bound to have a data breach. But whenever this data breach happens, how many people are going to get affected? Like, what kind of information are they storing, right? And what preventative and proactive steps can we take to ensure that student and staff data from the DOE is safe, right? So that includes that security risk evaluation, and then information security questionnaire. So that, they're gonna ask you like, hey, what are you taking from me? Like, and this is a big focus on what we call PII, which is personal identifiable information. So that includes a lot of different things that you might even not know classify as PII. So your email classifies as PII, your name, date of birth, any sort of demographic information, your like student grades, parent information, addresses. So all of that information, they all classify as PII, and all vendors need to go through this process whether or not they touch PII. There's a classification that says no PII, and you can click that classification if the vendor does not collect any form of information like whatsoever. So that's what ERMA compliance is about. Your purchase orders, if they're above $5,000, they go through a second level of approval. So your school administration signs it off, and then it goes to your division of school leadership team. That's your regional borough office, and they sign off all these things for approval. If your software is not ERMA compliant, they will reject your purchase order, and they'll say, hey, you're not allowed to purchase this because we don't see a record in ERMA that the company and the product has gone through this whole process and they're approved, right? So they'll say, no, you're not allowed to buy it. ERMA is also almost like a secondary hidden layer within ERMA, which is called the data request. So if a company wants to take data from the DOE, they go through ERMA and everything. Now they are allowed to take data from the DOE, but this doesn't mean that they have all the data from the DOE, right? So me as a company, I sign all my legal documents, I go through my compliance process, my product is now certified. Now if a school wants to use whatever product that I made, they have to submit a secondary request if they want data from the DOE, right? So for example, like a really good one, like to take as an example is, I think there's a Google Classroom, right? So Google Classroom, for example, takes all like student data, grades data, like all this data from the DOE, right? Google Classroom is already a contracted application, which means that they have access to all the data in the DOE. But if someone makes a secondary, like a substitute or an alternative to Google Classroom, that could be SyncGrade's Infinite Campus, or for the Sty kids, I think you guys have something called Talos or Jupyter, like all these different applications. These are all considered third-party applications, right? If a school wants to use this application, they have to fill out a second request and say, hey, central teams, can you please share my school's data with this company so this company has all my school's data, right? So this just like mitigates in the event that there is a breach. They can you know, like look at the bigger picture and say, hey, only these schools were shared the data to this vendor, and these are the potential people or the potential information that might have been leaked, and not just like like all the DOE is like leaked online on the black market. And a couple final key reminders, right? The DOE is an ever-changing and ever so confusing process. Every single like couple months, something changes, process change. People get audited, and like you know, people realize that, hey, like we've been doing something wrong the whole time, right? And then like new things happen, things change, and vendors, they don't really keep up to date, right? The reality is, I tell everyone that the vendors don't need the DOE. We as the DOE and as schools and as teachers, we need the DOE, we need the vendors a lot more than the vendors need us. Like most of these large companies, they have customer bases like from all over the place, right? Whether it's universities, the general public, private schools, like businesses, like there's just a lot of people out there, especially for the larger companies, serving like a lot of these vendors, right? So they don't really need the business that the DOE generates, other than for certain small cases, right? Like certain companies are engineered towards the DOE, but there's a lot of companies that aren't. So I think that it is in our, it is our role and our job to keep our vendors in good standing, to maintain a good relationship with them, right? And some of this includes, even if some things feel like that they're not our job, that hey, we have to update the vendors, right? And keep them up to date about what things that have changed, processes that have changed, right? If certain companies they go through like an acquisition process, like magically they have a parent company, or they split into 3 companies, right? Or they change their billing address, right? Things like this, like they're not gonna think about, hey, I have to go into the DOE system and update my information, right? They're just gonna like keep carrying on with business as per usual until like one day they realize, oh no, our information was all wrong, right? So like if someone notices like, hey, there's like this vendor hasn't been getting emails with purchase orders, you should probably like take a step ahead, like take a step forward and like, hey, why did they not get the purchase orders, right? Like they probably don't have their email updated. A lot of vendors have some employees' email updated. Some have like some employees' email on file, and then the employee retires or moves to a different company or got fired, and now the emails go to the void and no one receives them anymore, right? There's also been instances where companies, they straight up like don't even know that they're registered as a vendor. Like it might have been like one person that was involved in like one salesperson involved in this whole process, and that salesperson left the company, and now they have no idea what's going on, right? So that's another like very common thing that happens. Follow up with your orders. Like it doesn't, unlike in the past, I think like pre-COVID, like purchase orders used to be physically mailed, like snail mailed with a stamp on it in an envelope to the company. That doesn't happen anymore. Like purchase orders should be delivered the following morning. Like everything that's approved today will go out the following morning by an automated system at 6 a.m., like precisely 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it comes from an email, it's called e-orders@schools.nyc.gov, right? If they don't receive it by the following day, or even in like 2 days, like let's say your building administration was slow to approve it, and let's say like in 2 days that they don't get it, something is wrong. Like if your building administration has approved it and they don't get the purchase order in like 1 or 2 days, that's an immediate like red flag. Like like don't sit there and be like, oh, maybe they'll receive it in a week, or maybe like in 2 months, this thing that I ordered never showed up. Like something is not normal, something is wrong. Provide resources for help, right? Like we as the schools, even as the schools, they don't keep us updated on everything. There's a lot of process changes that even we don't know about, right? And as much as like we want to try and help them, sometimes there's questions that we don't have the answer for, right? And that's why at the last slide, and on the last slide, and I think maybe I put it on the resources, you'll see a list of contacts that they can go to, people that they can call, right? They can provide answers, right? Like if they ask you a question, you don't know the answer, don't just ignore them, right? Like you can provide phone numbers, provide emails, right? A place that they can at least somewhere to look for help, right? If you don't know the answer, point them to someone who knows the answer. Deliveries have to be done June 30th, right? This is something that the DOE has called a fiscal year. It's not the same as a calendar year. Just like how a school year starts in September and ends in June, a fiscal year, which is only for accounting purposes, starts on July 1st and ends on June 30th. So right now we're in fiscal year 26. This is considered fiscal year 26. So September 2025 to June 2026 school year is considered fiscal year 26 or FY 26, if you ever see that on a document. All your purchase orders, if you've noticed, if you ever recently saw a copy of any purchase order generated from your school, say WO26 something, or they say WR26 something. WR is contracted, WO is non-contracted. But all those deliveries have to be completed by June 30th. If a vendor does not deliver something by June 30th, technically they can't get paid for it. Because if the purchase order is not certified on June 30th, then the money goes to the void. Like straight up, poof, disappears, right? And if you want the same thing, or if the vendor delivers like July 1st or July 2nd or July whatever, you have to generate a new purchase order under the following year's budget. So for example, if like June 30th, 2026 hits and an order I placed this year doesn't come, and then instead it gets delivered July 15th, I have to generate a new purchase order out of my fiscal year 2027 budget, and then send that to the vendor. We certify that for delivery, and then they get paid out of our new budget. All right, so make sure that things get delivered on June 30th. Most vendors know this. This is also why, if you've noticed, purchasing closes like somewhere towards the middle/end of April, and you can't place any more orders, is to allow this massive window for certain things that take a lot of time to deliver. Make sure you upload your documentation to Polaris, right? So Polaris is mainly vendor-sided, but for certain things, the school sides, we also have to do some work. So the agendas and those sign-in sheets that I was talking about earlier for the services purchase orders. So services is labor, time, effort, right? If you have any of those type of purchase orders, make sure you upload your document into Polaris. You need your agenda, you need your sign-in sheet. Otherwise, the vendor also cannot get paid. And yeah, the final thing, make sure they get paid. There's a procurement secretary and anyone with access to FAMIS. I think if I remember correctly, it's a stupid acronym. The DOE loves stupid acronyms. I think it stands for the Financial Accounting Management Information System. That's what FAMIS stands for. This is where they can check whether a vendor got paid or not, right? If a purchase order got paid or not, right? Make sure you guys make sure to stay up to date on whether a company has been paid or not for the services and goods that they've rendered. Important to always keep up to date with all things going on with your vendor, right? If they delivered you something, hey, make sure that they get paid, right? It's part of It's part of honoring the agreement that's in the purchase order. So I'm going to open it up now. I think, how much time do I have left?
Like 17 minutes.
Like 17, 15 minutes, right? I'm going to open it up now to any questions that you guys might have. These are some of the contact information that I have here. Client services is what the schools can email if they have a question. They're not always helpful sometimes because these are just like call center staff. So for certain questions, you might have to escalate. Accounts payable, if a vendor has a question, or I guess even a school has a question, you can email the accounts payable email to follow up on certain things, whether it's rules, regulations, or whether something has been paid or not, or payment issues or questions. Vendor hotline, this is a big one for vendors to call. If they have a question and you don't have an answer to it, this is like the #1 place I point them to. So the vendor hotline, option 1, Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern time. They can give a call to that and someone will pick up and answer the questions. Vendor setup. Vendor setup is a team at Central that adds new vendors to the system. So there's already a massive database of vendors that you can use, but if you ever want to add more vendors for whatever purpose it might be, or a specific product that you might be looking for that no one else is selling, you can add vendors. There's a detailed article on InfoHub about how to add a vendor. The process is basically you have to give them a form called the Substitute W-9. It's a public form found on the Comptroller's website. They fill out that form, and then there's a vendor add form that a DOE employee fills out. So you upload the documents, you fill that out, and then within about 6 to 8 weeks, you'll be able to spend your taxpayer money on that company. And then the last thing is the PIP help desk. That's the payee information portal. That's where vendors register to get their direct deposit payments. So if they need help registering, forgot their password, sometimes people register and then they leave the company. If you ever need something like that, that's the email that they contact, and that's the help desk. Questions from anyone? That was a very dense presentation.
Are rentals considered services or use?
Rentals? Like U-Hauls?
Yeah, when you need to rent a U-Haul to deliver your own, right?
I would consider that services, a rental. Same thing with like custom printing. If you ever do custom ink, for example, is a vendor. If you ever do custom shirts or hoodies, things like that, I would consider that a rental. I would consider that a service also. Just like if you're renting something, right? Because they're not really selling you the vehicle. You're just kind of taking borrowing something from them temporarily. So yeah, something like that I would consider a service. By the way, there's a sheet called the budget codes and summaries that you can always check out on InfoHub, and they provide a detailed list of information regarding what each item what budget codes or numbers each different type of item falls into. And if you don't know what that might be, you can always also reach out to your DSL procurement specialists, and they'll tell you what number they prefer to see on their purchase orders.
So I think I mentioned this to you when I met you before.
Mm-hmm.
So we had CAD workshops today about using Onshape, and every robotics team in the city I know uses Onshape.
Mm-hmm.
I initiated a ERMA approval request in September from Onshape.
Right.
Still says initiated. So the 4 to 6 month thing you're saying you would anticipate that by the end of build season, you'd be officially allowed to use Onshape?
Yeah.
If so, give me advice about how do you actually function as a team? So if the process does take about 4 to 6 months to complete, main reason for that is because there's just the DOE legal team, and specifically the data privacy lawyer team, legal team, is very small. They get assigned a massive number of cases, right? And in every email, I think if you're the one that initiates the ERMA request, you get copied in the ERMA request, and you stay on the whole email chain the whole time. Most of the ones that I've seen, the lawyers, they're serious. They'll say, hey, you will only get a response from me once every 2 weeks. Whatever instructions I give you, please be sure you are following them very, very specifically. Do not make any mistakes on anything. Don't leave anything blank. Check everything that you sign and write over 15 times. Otherwise, if you make a mistake, I'll come back and tell you that you made a mistake and you won't hear me again for the next 2 weeks. That's the biggest reason why ERMA compliance takes 4 to 6 months to complete. On the topic of how do we function as a team,
personally, we don't use Onshape. We use Fusion, and Autodesk products, I believe, like Autodesk, I believe is listed as a compliant vendor. I don't know if Fusion as a product is, but I know that Autodesk as a vendor is listed as a compliant item. And I think AutoCAD, I know is not. AutoCAD is still in progress, but there's
For 25 years.
yeah. So I would say, like, how would I put this is that a lot of the vendors that the schools are actively using right now, if there was an ERMA audit, I would safely guarantee that every single building in the DOE would fail the audit. I don't know if there's like a better way to put that, but like whether or not, you know, the central teams may like to see that, like every single building is using software that is not compliant, like somewhere, right? Whether they know it or they don't. Like, because even like a simple website that you have to type in your email, that's like, if that's not on the list, you're out of compliance already, right? Now, why does ERMA exist? Like, it's like, there's a lot of laws that like we should have, like, that, you know, should like exist, like as in everyone should be following them. A very small number of people actually follow like the laws that ERMA is behind. I would say like there's a lot of different there's a lot like this like ERMA thing all started as a result of a data breach that you may have known as Pupil Path or Schedula once upon a time ago. So Pupil Path or Schedula had a massive data breach. All like student information, like I think down to the level of like date of birth to the demographics, like basically everything student related was leaked, right? And on top of that, the staff members' informations were also leaked. And it resulted in the DOE having to purchase identity theft protection for everyone involved in this like data breach. And that's when when IRMA was like really like pushed onto people, right? Because the people that had to take the blame for IRMA, for, you know, not for like that data breach, were the people at Central who were supposed to be overseeing technology and information security, right? So like I would say that IRMA is more created such that whenever something does go wrong and it goes public and people find out about it, who do we blame? Right? So and they need the ability to point fingers at someone and blame someone. Right? So I think that's where like the purpose of IRMA comes around. Additionally, but pre-COVID, if you, I don't think there's any more pre-COVID students, but we have pre-COVID staff members. Every school used to have their own Google Workspace unit. Every school would have their own email system, like their own Google email, their own Google Classrooms, right? Some schools today still do have their own emails, like you guys. It's not allowed, actually.
Okay, you take it out.
Oh, okay, good. At some point, I guess, you know, sooner. Later better than never. Sooner better than later, but later better than never. So like schools are not allowed to have their own email systems anymore. Like that is also not allowed, right? And a big part of that was because of information security and identity theft and all these things that were happening in the DOE that were getting to the media, and the central teams don't really like eyes on them. So at the end of the day, you know, someone has to be blamed for data breaches, and now they're saying that, hey, you chose to use it, you're gonna get blamed for it instead of them. But yeah, that's for the most part why IRMA exists and what, you know, what it's really about. But if you guys have any more further questions, ask me anything now or send me a message on Teams. That's like the best way to contact me. I don't think a lot of DOE staff members don't use Teams. I'm in contact with a lot of Central team members, and all of DOE Central uses Teams. So send me a message on Teams or send me an email or send me a text. But that's the end of my presentation, and thank you so much for attending.